Welcome to the class. Today we are going to discuss participle construction in English sentences. As you know, a sentence is the basic unit of our conversation. We speak in sentences. We need to know the construction and function of sentences for accuracy. Accuracy is an important aspect of learning a new language. We communicate with others. We need communicative ability in a new language. We need basic foundation for our communications. But all these things are contingent upon practicing accuracy for success and for successful implementations of what we learn. Learning basic communication in a new language is very different from professional functioning in a new language. For us, English is not just required for basic functioning of asking a few questions or answering a few questions, but we need to know English in a way that we can use this language in all our functional domains, including communications. We need to express ourselves. We need to understand what others say, not only what is obvious, but also in between lines. And the more impressive we sound, the more impressively we communicate, we look better, we sound better, and it has the desired impact. For these purposes, we need to gain accuracy, the level of accuracy in construction of a sentence. As we know, a sentence is a basic unit and it has two parts. It has a subject and a predicate. A predicate has a verb in it, which is the most important part of a sentence. Verbs have objects in them, and also additionally inside the predicate we have adverbs. Then we have certain lexical categories, certain aspects in lexical categories, then we have functional categories, and we know several parts of a sentence. In order to move further, to understand more details about the elements in a sentence, it is nice and important to know participle constructions. And for achieving these purposes, we are going to discuss what participle constructions are and how they function. As you understand, once we know how these things function in language, that is, how these things function in learning, and if we understand their functioning, their construction in our subconscious, then we can reach that level of accuracy for achieving fluency and thus to communicative competence, and to the next level where we really achieve communicative confidence. Let's go and look at how participle constructions work and what they are. 6 examples for you to look at on this screen. And as usual, you need to pay attention to the full sentence, but specifically to the elements in color, in red. So the first sentence says, Raju was wearing a torn shirt. The house looked abandoned. Raju abandoned the house. So, please pay attention to these three sentences, and through these examples, by paying close attention to these aspects, we will see the functions and their purpose in the sentence. We are looking at participles. So, by now you would have figured it out that the elements in red are participles. What do they look like formally, in a form wise? Do they look familiar to you? If they do, look at their uses in the sentence. Raju was wearing a torn shirt. The house looked abandoned. How does these two words look to you? They look like a verb. So, we are talking about participles. And we are going to derive the following, the things that I am going to write for you, we are going to derive them from these examples. So, while looking at participles, we are looking at a word torn. We are looking at a verb abandon. See, these things are verbs where we are adding some element at the end of it. This is a verb which changes its complete shape. So, this is a different word. Now, so they are verbs and they have some markers on them. That's one thing that we derive from these examples. When they are the verbs, look at them and see if they are the main verb in the predicate. The answer is no, because in the first sentence, Raju was wearing a torn shirt. The main verb of this predicate is wearing. I meant something else with this sentence, but this is a fine sentence, but you can also you can also use another one, wearing. That will be a fine sentence too. So you can say Raju was wearing a torn shirt. Or the sentence is fine as well, Raju was bearing a torn shirt. That's fine. In either case, the verbs that has another marker is the main verb of the sentence. This is a transitive verb and it requires an object, and shirt is the object of that verb in the predicate. Very clear structure. Now, what is the function of this? The function is that they do look like verbs, but they seem like modifying this noun. That is, torn looks like it's modifying the noun shirt. In a way, we will have things like red shirt or white shirt. So we can say Raju was wearing a white shirt. Raju was bearing a red shirt. We can say these things. So in a way, this word looks like a verb, but it has some adjectival function. So remember that in mind, and when it has adjectival function. Adjectival means like adjective. Adjectival functions, then it is not the main verb of the sentence. These are some of the things that we gather from just these two examples. Look at this. The house looked abandoned. This is in a participle where the verb is look. But in the next sentence, Raju abandoned the house. This is not participle. This is the main verb. So in this sentence, Raju is the subject, abandoned is this is the predicate. In this is the verb, and this is the house is the object of the verb. So, and therefore, it is not adjectival here, it's the main verb. So, a verb may, a participle is derived from a verb, and it may have adjectival function. These are the two important parts that we get from the context of their uses here. Let's check this thing further. Looking at my condition, they felt sad. Now, this is a different kind of a sentence. What is the sentence here, and what is the subject, what is the verb, and what is the predicate? Here is the sentence. In this, you have, this is the predicate. So, they, subject, felt, verb, and sad is a predicative adjective. Looking at my condition, this is a clause, and this is a modifier clause which has a very different function. It has elements in it, but it has a very different function. It is modifying, and I want you to find out what it is modifying. But important part for us to check is, this is not part of the main sentence. This is for the sentence, but this is not part of the main sentence. By main sentence, I simply mean it is not part of the subject, it is not part of the predicate, it is not the verb, it doesn't have anything to do with those parts. This is a clause. Please decide what type of clause it is. Is it a relative clause? Is it a subordinate clause? Is it a clause that is part of the object in the verb? Please check what type of clause it is. And I am also trying to answer this question by telling you it's a modifier clause, and it modifies certain things in the sentence. So please check that part. I am leaving it here for you to figure out. But when we look within that clause, we see, looking at my condition, it looks like a verb. This part is also looking like a verb. And what, looking at what? My condition. So this is a PP, my condition. Looking at my condition, they felt sad. So it's part of it's like a verb. So another type of verb with this one, ing, not a verb in the sentence. I was looking for an old book, but if you use the same sentence here in this sentence, you see that this is part of the predicate. I is the subject, looking is the verb, and old book is the object of this sentence. So just giving you a contrastive example, in one, looking is not the verb. In the second one, looking is the main verb in the predicate. Running nose is not a good symptom. Here, running nose is part of the subject here, but running is not the subject. It's modifying the noun here. So again, this running has modifier function. It functions like an adjective for nose. So we see from these 6 examples that we have 2 types of participles. We have a participle which has an ing in it, and we have a participle which has either ed or some other form, past form of the verb. So we derive this much of information by looking at few sentences. Let's look at some more examples. We hear these things as part of a sentence, as part of situation, and I have tried to simplify them in presenting them for you. Breaking news, working people, sleeping tiger, baked potatoes, roasted chicken, fried vegetables. Don't we use these sentences, these phrases? In these phrases, please pay attention to them. Breaking, working, sleeping. What are they? These are the verbs, and we don't need to spend too much time on that in figuring them out, that we have ing verbs with ing in these examples. And in these examples we have verbs with ed. This is what we see. We can use them in a sentence, and even without a sentence, all these examples with ing and ed have function of adjectives to the nouns they precede. Breaking news, working people, sleeping tiger, baked potatoes, roasted chicken, and fried vegetables. I pause here and I suggest you the following. Please pay attention to these types of constructions in your reading, in your writing, and in your speech, and also when you hear others speak. You will find these things appearing quite often in our sentences that we use when we read, when we speak. And also try to make few sentences with these examples and examples like these. That will help you practice these participial constructions. So, we find in the total discussion so far that there are two types of participles in English. One is a participle with V plus ing and a participle plus V plus ed. Some people refer to them, one as present participle and two as past participle. I want to add a footnote here. It has very little to do with either present or past. Is present and past not as tense? It's just for the purpose of identifying the forms people probably use these terms. Otherwise, they don't have anything to do with present or past as tense. As you probably understand by now, tense equals to time. Anything that has to do with tense has to refer to time. A form like tense is not really tense. In following from that, I mean, we can call V plus ing type as present participle and V plus ed type as past participle, but they have very little to do with either present or past. This is an important part for you to see, and this probably happens to be the crux of the entire discussion, and if you understand this much, we are done with participles. Also because, remember, a participle has a function like an adjective or an adverb, but a participle, in other words, participle never functions like the main verb of the sentence. And when we talk about time in a sentence, the time, information about time gets hosted on the main verb of the sentence. This is how a sentence gets computed in our subconscious, in our mind, and that's how we naturally learn a language. When we learn languages that we speak as first language, or speakers of English who have learned English as their first language, this is what they learn. This is what they figure out. And we need to pay attention to the things that people figure out from normal, natural, and spontaneous acquisition. Tense comes as part of information about time on the main verb of the sentence, that is part of the predicate, not the elements that look like, that has functions like adjectives, or they look like in some form. I hope you get this point and you keep them separate. Nonetheless, these are the terms used in traditional literature, traditional grammar. So, and also when we say present or past, we need to account for functions, not just forms. We make this distinction probably because of the following reasons. Look at this. You must have noticed hundreds and thousands of verbs which can have these kinds of forms. And I have purposely brought only two for you to see. We have some irregular verbs where we have eat, ate, eaten. So eat is, this is V1, is probably present. And V2 is past. What is this V3? It's actually the participle form, but since it looks, they resemble with each other, we call them past participle. And in contrast with this past participle, when we see some form with ing, we call them present participle. I still want to underline that these have very little to do with the tense, probably nothing to do with tense. They have completely different function in a sentence. We can categorically say participle functions as adjectives. They function as adjectives just as relative clauses function as adjectives. I'm only bringing this for your reference, that when we have a relative clause in a sentence, it functions as adjectives. So now we can say a relative clause is a modifier, an adjective is a modifier, and a participle is also a modifier. So look at some more examples to see these examples closely. Where I want your attention now in these sentences is running away from difficulties. Look at this. This is part of the subject. You have an element with ing as part of the subject, running away from difficulties. So this is definitely a participial construction. Making portraits, this is participial because this is used as a modifier. Making portraits, this is also used as a modifier, is certainly a good way of spending time. Look at the participial use with ing, spending time, modifying time. Look at this one, cooked vegetables, modifying cooked as a participle, modifying vegetables can be harmful. You don't have to take these things literally. As I mentioned, using these sentences out of the context. Of course, these are grammatical sentences. They are good sentences, but I'm using them out of the context without any message for retaining the focus on the points that I am trying to make. So you don't have to read these sentences for any message. So these are some of the participial uses in the sentence which not just look like an adjective, but they function as adjectives in in a sentence. Sometimes participles also function as nouns. And when they function as noun, they are called, there is a special term in the grammar, not a very complex thing, very simple thing to understand, but this term is called gerund. Gerund is simply a verb, it's a verb with ing. So, you have seen verbs with ing are like participles. So, a participial form of the verb can be used as a noun, and when they are used as noun, they are called gerunds. So, look at this. A very simple sentence like swimming is fun. Here the verb swim has an ing, but it's a sentence, and in this sentence we can say this is a noun and this is a predicate. Swimming is fun. Running reduces risk of heart attack. So, running is a simple noun, not used as an adjective for another noun. Running reduces risk of heart attack. So, when you or if it, we can say walking. So, adding an ing to a verb and using them as a noun is a very productive pattern in English. So, a participial construction used as a noun is a very productive pattern in English, and we don't need to lose focus from them. When they become noun, they don't remain verbs. And when they are used as a noun in a sentence as subject or object, there has to be something else functioning as the verb. Therefore, it is important for us to understand the basic template of a sentence. Once we understand the basic template of a sentence like subject and predicate, within the predicate a verb, then any other element in any other form, we can look at them, find out their construction and function, and we can use them in a sentence in variety of ways and also understand their functioning. We can work on them, get them, and we can use them for attaining accuracy and fluency. But we don't mistake them for anything else. This happens, we get to that level when we try to see their construction from the perspective of their acquisition in our subconscious, that is subconscious computation. This will help us get to the desired goal for better fluency through accuracy and thus achieving confidence. So, please look at these functions, these structures, these uses of nouns, verbs with ing or verbs with ed constructions, which are the third form of the verb V3, and their functions in when you read something, when you write something, and when you speak or hear somebody speak. A careful attention to this will make your language much better and impressive. Thank you so much. Looking forward to a discussion on this. See you soon.